In my 20s, I was very much Wolf of Wall Street on a trading room floor, making tons of money doing lines of coke in the toilets. I had a full-blown nervous breakdown one morning. Couldn't go to work, was an uncontrollable mess, collapsed on the floor, thought I was having a heart attack. Thought I was dying, kind of hoped I was.
Today, we are joined by Tom Cronin, the meditation expert, who is here to share how we can best help alleviate anxiety, depression, and poor mental health by embracing the present moment and reshaping our mindset to one of fulfillment through the practice of meditation. But how do we continue with that blissful, conscious mindset and not get hijacked by life?
We need to get people meditating because then that liberates us from that shackle of the indoctrination. It gives us access to a field of wisdom. Meditation over time will give you greater and greater sovereignty and a stability to be in the world but not thrown around by it. This is called moksha. A lot of people with emotional clearing coming out of the body, we go, let that come out. You've been holding that in there for so long. Allow yourself the sensation as that moves itself out of the body and releases itself energetically. The present moment, there's no stress. That's where peace lives. But the mind doesn't live in the present moment. The mind is in the future and the past, and that's when it makes things complex. The blue sky exists with that, that there's clouds in there or not. The big question is, are you ready to surrender and experience that?
It's interesting that when I looked in the back end of our YouTube channel and it says 95% of you that watch it frequently haven't yet hit the subscribe button. So I have a small favor to ask. If you've ever watched this channel and enjoyed the content, please, can I ask you a small favor? Please hit the subscribe button. It honestly helps this channel more than I can explain. And I promise you, if you do that, I will return the favor. We will make this show better and better. That's a promise that I'm willing to make if you press the subscribe button. Do we have a deal? Tom Cronin, thank you so much for making the trip out. What made you want to come out here today and jump on the podcast?
Yeah, I looked at your Instagram, we got chatting, and I could see that you're really, making a difference in the world, inspiring people how to improve their mental health. And it's a really big area that I'm passionate about. Mental health is something that I grappled with, many years ago, poor mental health, that is. And I learned through some difficult times and doing a lot of study that mental health is something that we need to work at. And I was really passionate about making the world have better mental health. And, I could see that the work you're doing. So I'm very fascinated and interested and inspired to see if I can support other people improving their state of mind and, sharing some insights and hopefully some techniques that can, add value to their life.
The reason I wanted to get you on was obviously I see you as a meditation expert. And I mentioned to you before, I believe everyone should incorporate the tool of meditation and other tools into their daily routine, especially in the stressful world that we live in now. And for me, anxiety's played a massive part in my role. And I've seen that anxiety played a big part in your life too, and depression. And you ended up getting to a point of, I would say, rock bottom where you had to make that change. But before we dive into that, what's the earliest context that myself and the listener need to know about you to better understand the man that sits in front of us today?
I guess lived experience. I know what it's like to experience anxiety. I know what it's like to have panic attacks. I know what it's like to have depression. I know what it's like to have chronic insomnia. I know what it's like to have really a technical nervous breakdown. I know what it's like to have addictions. These are things that plagued me many years ago. I also know what it's like to move out of that and to realize that is a catalyst for change. It's not something that you need to be a victim of. It's not something that you need to have a label on you for the rest of your life. It's a cue. It's an indication. It's a guideline to make a difference in your life and do things differently. And so I've gone through that and I've come out of that. And so now it's about really helping other people to make that transition and make that shift in their life as well.
What was your upbringing like?
It was a really good upbringing. I had a really wholesome upbringing. Went to, I was on a farm with a family of 7. I was the middle child of 5 wonderful siblings, 4 siblings myself. And, we were very Catholic sort of upbringing, went to church every week. We said grace every dinner, and we, did the rosary during Lent. And, it was quite a wholesome sort of upbringing. And then I went to an all-boys school, an all-boys Catholic school, which I didn't really feel I fitted in. I was out of Campbelltown. I felt a bit of an odd bob there.
What school was that?
St.
Grace?
Yeah.
Played footy there.
Yeah, right. I was not built for football. I was quite skinny in my teenage years. And so it being a rugby school, as you know, I felt like a bit of a fish out of water. Plus being an all-boys school, I really struggled with that. And that was a bit of a difficult time. When I finished school, I went into finance, and that was kind of like another fish out of water for me. I was supposed to do journalism at university, but had some time to fill in and needed some money, so applied for a bunch of jobs. So next thing I'm on a trading room floor. So that was an interesting transition, going out of being, living on a farm, going to an all-boys Catholic school. Next thing you're on a trading room floor in a city, thrown into very Wolf of Wall Street type environment.
Did you feel different growing up?
I did feel very different. I remember playing soccer for local Tamil Rovers. I remember playing rugby league for Picton Magpies, and always in those big groups of men feeling a little bit of an oddball. I knew I was a little bit different and that I wasn't that real blokey type guy. And so quite often I kind of found that whole camaraderie with men, which was just taking the piss all the time and kind of alpha mailing each other up, trying to see who could up level. It just wasn't sort of my, the way of living and the way I sort of operated. And so I did feel a bit odd at times when I was in those big male groups.
Were you a mummy's boy? Because the reason I asked that is I was a mummy's boy, and grew up playing rugby league, but I never felt like I fit in.
Yeah.
And I went to Patrician Brothers at Blacktown, which is a rugby school. Yeah. So once again, all boys, didn't feel like I fit in. I didn't feel like I was masculine, because I always had my mum as a big part of my life, and that feminine side of me is what came out a lot of the times. So that's the reason I could relate to you. And I wanted to ask, are you a mummy's boy?
I did have a really close connection with mum, still do today. And I'm a big carer of my mum at the moment, who's in an aged care. And we have a very close relationship. And I think that tenderness that she instilled in us, and dad as well, dad had this, both mum and dad were very kind and caring and big contributors to the community. And I think that really influenced me in that softer side of me. That really, I see that in my son as well. He's got that real kind, caring, nurturing side. Maybe it's genetics, maybe it's nurtured into us, I'm not sure. But I definitely had a strong connection with my mum, and that influenced me in life a lot.
How did you feel like you connected with other men growing up, or even now? So when, not so much anymore, but probably back when you were younger, it's the macho man. And as you mentioned, everyone's trying to alpha each other. How did you deal in those circles of those men?
In those environments in the past, I struggled because of what the idea of masculinity was. The idea of masculinity back then was, who could take the piss the most, who could be the toughest, who could be the ballsiest, who could do the most stupid things. And that just wasn't who I was as a human. And not that there was anything wrong with that, or my way was right or wrong, none of that. It's just that I was different. But these days I have a deeper appreciation of what masculinity is. And it's not who can take the piss the most. It's who has the most integrity, who has the most strength of character, who has the most leadership qualities, who has the most strong decision-making capabilities. Masculinity isn't about the loudest and the most, the most brashest. It's deeper and richer than that. And I think we need to start really exploring what true masculinity is. And I was talking to my son about it. He was saying that he's not masculine, that masculine as much as he'd like to be. And he was defining it based on how he was built. I said, that's not masculinity. You've got really beautiful, strong masculine qualities. It's just that your idea, like mine was at school, was that masculinity is about how you're built. And if you're built like a brick shithouse, then you're masculine. And if you're not, then you're not masculine. I said, that's not what masculinity is. Masculinity is a way of living. And you've got very strong, beautiful qualities of masculinity, which is the strong decision-making and direction in life and strength of character and integrity, but also that tenderness and that kindness to know how to, be a real gentleman with women and children and animals and the universe and nature itself. And I help him to understand what masculinity is in today's world. And I think we need to really reassess what it is to be a truly masculine person.
Do you feel the term masculinity has been tainted? Everyone's saying toxic masculinity. Mm. What's your take on that? And do you feel like it is having a negative impact on the next generation of men coming through?
Yeah, look, I definitely think we've got toxicity in life. We've got ways of living that aren't really sustainable. And the thing with that is that there's always karma. when we're living in the world where there's cause and effect, everything has this intelligence embedded within it that helps support us and find a better way forward. And we either listen to that or don't. But the thing with that is that there's always a guidance system within us that helps us continually evolve and improve. And there's toxic ways of being male, there's toxic ways of being female, there's toxic ways of being masculine, there's toxic ways of being feminine. And, I don't think it's exclusive to masculinity to have toxicity. I think there's just better ways to do things all the time. I'm always looking at doing things better. And for me, the process of evolution, the process of evolving, the process of being better never ends. And it's an ongoing process.
I was having this conversation with a mate of mine the other day, and we were speaking about whether society is trying to breed out masculinity out of our young men. And in a way, could be a conspiracy, could not, but to make men more feminine, so we're not as strong and we're a lot more controllable. What's your take on that? Do you feel like masculinity is getting bred out?
I definitely see a pattern and a trend to an emasculation of the male. And I can see why some people might want that to happen. In some respects, that Neanderthal type, brutal, aggressive male that was kind of using these words, rape and pillaged of how to live life. And a lot of those types of people run large, successful organizations in the world, which is just, we just got to do what we can to get the best outcome for our business or for ourselves or for the bottom line. And that, let's just call it toxic masculinity that runs businesses or is in life in general. That's not a healthy type of masculine. And so we definitely need some refinement of that form of masculinity. I don't think that the best solution is to emasculate men. I think that the best way to go forward is to look at what is a wholesome masculine and a healthy masculine. We definitely don't want to have no masculinity on the planet. The whole yin and yang, the Taoist symbol of wholeness requires good, healthy masculine and good, healthy feminine, and that's within each and every one of us. We don't want to just be all masculine or all feminine. We actually want this beautiful, nurtured balance of strong masculine and strong feminine, and that really creates a really healthy whole human and a whole healthy society as well. So we need aspects of healthy masculine in our society and aspects of healthy feminine in our society. Without those two, we're going to be really depleted in some way, shape or form. But I can see that from the conspiracy viewpoint, it definitely makes people a lot more controllable if they don't have that very robust, strong alpha male masculine present. And so there could be some inclination or inspiration to reduce that. And how that might be done, it could be done through a number of different things. It could be through, the toxicity in our water that we drink. It could be in the huge amounts of chemicals that are in our food, shampoos, soaps, toothpaste. I mean, it's in every aspect of the life that we, the bed linen that we get washing in our laundry, then we go and lie in that every night. We just don't know the long-term implications of what that's doing to us.
It's a rabbit hole, eh?
What's that?
It's a rabbit hole.
It's absolutely a rabbit hole. And it's something that we know definitively is going to have an impact on us in some way, shape or form. We just don't know the long-term impacts.
How do you feel we get to that point of, you mentioned the wholesome, balance between masculinity and feminism, or femininity? Is that the role of society, parents? How do we get to that point?
Well, first and foremost, which is why I'm an inspired meditation teacher, is that we need to shift our state of mind. What happens is that we get a very deep code in our mind, and that's these neurological patterns called vasanas. A vasana is a tendency of the mind to think in a particular way. And those vasanas or tendencies are deeply indoctrinated into us based upon the upbringing that we have, the society that we're in, and the general pattern of thinking that the society has. We kind of morph into that as being normal. We just think it's normal that we go and bet a lot of money on the horse races on a Saturday. We think it's normal to go and drink a whole lot of beer and watch the footy. We think it's normal that, we sit on a screen and scroll through TikTok all day long. Like, these are things that we've kind of normalized. It doesn't mean that that's the way society should be. It's just that what we've normalized is being familiar. And so the first thing that I find is that we need to get people meditating, because then that liberates us from that shackle of the indoctrination. And it gives us access to a field of wisdom. Now, the field of wisdom is something that is in us and all around us, just as the phone is in the internet. The information that the phone can access is all around the phone. And wisdom is all around us. We're in the field of wisdom. It's an infinite field of pure consciousness. And when we open our mind up to that field and get out of the limited framework of the way we think, when we meditate and open our mind up, what happens is we start accessing this field of knowledge, of wisdom, that we're like, oh, that's interesting. My thoughts weren't necessarily serving me. And maybe I need to start looking at the way I think from that level of consciousness that I've accessed to my meditation. Now we have two things. We have consciousness watching the thinking, as opposed to most people just thinking. And they don't really know how to break free of the shackles of their thinking because they only have their thoughts. Like Descartes, the French philosopher, I think, therefore I am. When we transcend in meditation and start accessing that infinite field of knowledge and wisdom, we then have this capacity to observe the mind and go, wow, look at the way your mind operates. Look at the way you think. Maybe we could start thinking differently and create new thought patterns that might serve you in a better way. And so that's one of the first steps in the process, is to start transcending the limited thinking mind and accessing the field of wisdom. And then from there, start thinking about what is a better way of doing things. What is a North Star for me? What is a way forward for me and humanity that can maybe not necessarily be what's always been done, but yeah, surely it's going to be a different model, but maybe it's a better model. And then as a leader, being fearless in starting to live and breathe that type of model and inspiring other people to maybe start to look at that model for them as well, because, hey, it seems to be working for you. Maybe I could try that as well.
It's like a ripple effect.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's how we start getting this spillover transition on the planet, because it's just person by person, podcast by podcast. We start helping people to question, ask, and then maybe look at other alternatives.
So many people are not thinking for themselves these days. That's why I love having these conversations, because we bring up different areas of conversation that most people may not have heard of before. And it gets people to think, okay, what these guys are speaking about, is it true? Is it not true? And it allows them to go do their own research and come up with their own conclusion, which is what I love about podcasting. There's always those few that will just make up their own conclusion in there and go, you're wrong, like far left, far right, without actually doing the research on both sides. And I think the best way to understand someone or a subject or whatever the case is to understand both sides of the story. Meditation was seen as a big hoodoo spiritual thing that hippies did. Now it's mainstream. Everyone's doing it. Everyone's seeing the benefits of meditation on your mind. Like, it's all connected. Where did that change happen? What, we went from hippies to now everyone's doing it. Why so?
Yeah, if we look at the more macro transition that humanity's in, and we go back for thousands of years, and we look at the last 10,000 years, and we've been in a particular paradigm, a status quo that is very reactive, very shaped by our society, very conditioned by our upbringing, and we just kind of morph along. And coming back to, your statement, which you said correctly, was that, we don't have a lot of, free thinking. And if you think of your average day, we have about 85% of our thoughts, that recurring thoughts of the day before and the day before and the day before, which is, how can I pay my electricity bill? How my team wins the footy? Who's going to get voted in the next election? Am I going to vote yes or no on the referendum? They're kind of like not really stepping outside a very tight perimeter of where our standard thoughts are on a daily basis. Now, the thoughts that are outside those recurring repetitive thoughts are thoughts that really, they're someone else's thoughts. So while someone's listening to this podcast, it's my thoughts that they're listening to. When they're in an Instagram feed, it's someone else's thoughts. When they're reading a newspaper article, someone else's thoughts. When they're reading an email, someone else's thoughts. So of the remaining thoughts that aren't repetitive, recurring thoughts the day before and the day before, the day before, they're someone else's thoughts, which leaves us with a very, very minuscule amount of time for free, deep, critical thinking. Now, I call this critical thinking in that it's putting aside time and really starting to sit with my current thought tracks and the nature of my mind, and not going into meditation. This is completely separate from meditation. We'll come to meditation in a moment. But critical thinking is really starting to probe the mind and starting to explore uncharted territory with the way I think about who I am as a human being and the life that I want to live and the society that I want to be part of and what that future society is that I could possibly be part of to create something new. And we have such limited time to actually do that because any spare time we've got these days, we're on our phone, which is someone else's thoughts again. And so we really got a society that is having very limited critical thinking, very limited proactive thinking about creating a new version of themselves. And that's why I take people away on retreats and why I teach meditation is because it allows this compartmentalized time to not just transcend their limited thinking mind, getting into a more expansive mind, but then to start putting aside times on those retreats and after your meditation for journaling and critical thinking. And that's when we do that after the meditation. Your mind's like much more expansive. It's like, wow, okay, there's a possibility for me in my life that I never imagined. And maybe I can start to roadmap that and start exploring what that might look like. And that's something that's, I think as a society, we really need to start exploring it as part of our day.
So in a way, meditation allows you to disconnect from the world to then reconnect with yourself, which then brings on critical thinking.
Yeah. It's a two-step process. Let's transcend the limited mind in meditation, create some quietness, create some space, allow the de-excitation of the mind, the nervous system and the body in the meditation experience. And we'll give everyone a bit of a taste of that today. And then after your meditation, have your pen and your journal with you and a notebook and start thinking about what does the future version of you look like? Because you're in the process of becoming someone, but now get clear on who you want that to be and what do you look like? What do you look like in 2 years' time, 5 years' time? What are you thinking? What are you feeling? What are you creating? What are you doing? And that becomes your North Star, your roadmap where you want to go. And it's very hard for a captain of a ship to navigate the journey if they don't know what the destination is. And so a lot of us don't know what our destination is, so there's no point in navigating the direction of where we're going. So they're just left at the mercy of the ocean, just throwing them around and letting circumstance dictate where they end up.
How did you get to this point in your life where you work in finance, you go down a dark path, and then now you find yourself in meditation? Fill me in the blanks there. Anxiety was obviously a big part of your life. How so, and what was your experience like?
Yeah, in my 20s, I was very much Wolf of Wall Street. If anyone's seen that movie, it was like, it gave me goosebumps when I saw how they portrayed a trading room floor in the late 80s.
It's really like that?
Yeah, it was so like that. It was unbelievable. And I was like, wow, they've really nailed this. And this was 87. I started my career. I was 19. And it was the same year that Jordan Belfort, Wolf of Wall Street, started his career. He was 22. And it was crazy times. And, before long, I had a corporate Amex card, a sports car. I was on 100 and something salary. And I was just a young kid, and they were just chucking it all at me. And so you don't have that consciousness and the capacity to be discerning. You just get swept along, like I was saying, that the vastness just swept along by the current of what that industry was all about, which was extreme narcissism and hedonism. And next thing, I was about to do journalism and write articles for Time magazine, saving the world from capitalistic greed. I just traveled around the world after taking a gap year off school, listening to Susie and the Banshees and the Smiths and reading French existentialism, Jean-Paul Sartre and Camus. And next thing I'm on a trading room floor making tons of money doing lines of coke in the toilets. So the good thing is when we're off our orbit, the universe has got you back and the universe will do everything it can to redirect you. And the way it does it is usually if we're stubborn and ignorant and resistant, it will kick our butt damn hard. And that's what the universe kept doing for me. Now, the thing is, if you ignore that, it will just kick your butt harder. It doesn't ever give up. And so it just kept throwing everything at me. Insomnia, cool, I can deal with that. Anxiety, no problem, I can deal with that. Next thing, waves of these panic attacks, like brutal panic attacks where I'd be curled up in the cubicle at work or unable to go to work at home, just in this wave of fear and dread and incredible nausea. Now, I didn't know what it was. It was just debilitating. And then, of course, when you have anxiety and panic attacks and insomnia, what happens is you're not producing any serotonin or oxytocin, the biochemicals of bliss, love, joy. You're just producing high levels of cortisol and adrenaline. So you'd lead eventually into deep, dark depression. Excuse me. And so this depression morphed and morphed. And again, this was just the universe looking after me. It's not a life sentence, and it's not that you should be labeled with anything. It's the universe saying, dude, you're not getting it. You keep doing the wrong things. You keep making the wrong choices. And we're not going to give up on you. We're going to make this brutally painful for you. And then what happens is if we either listen to those cues and messages, so suffering and pain is an indication to change. It's an invitation to adapt. But if we don't have that adaptive capacity, or we're resistant or resilient to the current trajectory we're on, then what happens is the universe brings in what we call a Rashi. Now, a Rashi in Vedic philosophy, in ancient Eastern philosophy, is a critical junction point where the current trajectory you're on is no longer sustainable. And now the universe has said, look, we've got a stubborn one here. They just don't get it. So we're going to have to make them choiceless. Now, at that point, when you get to a fork in the road means you must pivot and go one way or the other way. You can't keep going the same way. That's what the fork is. The fork is nah. You can't keep going ahead and doing the same thing. Now it's breakdown or breakthrough. Now a relationship will do that, divorce or get to the next level. A business will go into bankruptcy or go to the next level. An individual will break down into suicide or the next level. And so I was faced with breakdown, and I was really contemplating whether I wanted to go on with my life or break through. And that's when the universe sent this incredible moment of insight. I was watching a documentary. So what happened was I had a full-blown nervous breakdown one morning. Couldn't go to work, was an uncontrollable mess, collapsed on the floor, thought I was having a heart attack. Thought I was dying, kind of hoped I was, thought it was a heart attack. Got to the doctors with my wife. He explained to me that I was actually having a nervous breakdown. Now, that was the most crushing thing to ever hear from a doctor, because if he'd said heart attack, I knew they could fix that. Put a stent in, whatever, you can fix that. My first thought was, I'm fucked. Like, how do I get out of that? What's the solution? What's the fix? What are you going to do? And the first thing he did was I was just bawling my eyes out, and my wife was crying. I was crying. It was just a really messy situation. I thought I'd gone bonkers. I literally thought I'd lost my mind at that point. He sent me straight away to a psychiatrist, immediate emergency session that morning, one of the top clinics in Bronte. Still there today, sees lots of celebrities and sports stars and stuff like that. And I remember walking in, and he had this wall with all these plaques and certificates saying how skilled he was in the area of the mind. I remember him leaning forward on the desk, and he said to me that I have a stressful nature. I need to take these pharmaceutical drugs. So in the space of just a couple of hours, I had one doctor tell me that I'm having nervous breakdown, another one tell me that who I am as a human being is to be stressful. Now, what happened was, interestingly, I developed what's called agoraphobia, which is the inability to leave the house. So I couldn't go to work, couldn't get on a bus. It's just like everything was too overwhelming. This was in the mid-90s. And there was a documentary on TV at the time. So the problem with agoraphobia in the 90s, there's no Netflix and there's no internet. So you're just sitting watching free-to-air. And it was on Channel 9. And it was about Bruno Grollo, a big property developer. So I'm watching this documentary about how successful this guy is. And then they cut to this little segment in the story about how we used this particular style of meditation called transcendental meditation. And while he was talking about this technique that he used to, reduce stress and be successful, they showed him sitting in a chair. Now he's in this big room, sitting in a chair in a suit, and he's got his eyes closed, just sitting comfortably in a chair, meditating. And it was like this light bulb moment for me. I went to an all-boys Catholic school, grew up on a farm, and next thing I'm on a trading room floor. So I'd never come across anything like this. But for me, it was like a light bulb moment. And that was the moment I knew that I needed to explore this. So that's when I did something really crazy for all the young kids listening. I went and picked up the Yellow Pages, which is your Google now. And I started looking up M for meditation, started ringing all the different centers for meditation. And that's when I started my journey into Eastern philosophy. And it was a game changer. And I learned transcendental meditation. The anxiety, the panic attacks, the stress, all that went away. Wasn't perfectly enlightened, of course. I still had stuff to deal with and stuff to work on. But very quickly, all of those anomalies of the sympathetic nervous system just started to melt away as my body reorganized and reset itself through the stillness. And then I went back into that job for 16 more years on a trading room floor, but just without all the crazy stuff and without the stress, and just became a really successful person. So it's not about the nature of the jobs you're in that you have to walk away from. It's just the state that you're in while you're doing what you're doing. And that's the variable. That's the thing that we can work on and change.
Yeah, wow. What do you think the root cause of that anxiety, that depression was? Was it the environment you were in, or something deeper from childhood? Because it can stem up from a lot of different areas.
Yeah. It's, look, for me, and it's different for everyone. A lot of people are dealing with their own challenges and their own difficult circumstances and environments. The environment can be very influential. If you're at home getting beaten up by your dad, that's going to have a big impact on your nervous system, on your mind, on your biochemistry. For me, being on a trading room floor, it was high octane. So what happens when you're in that really intense environment day in, day out, not just in the daytime, but at nighttime, you're in the bars, the nightclubs, and you're out really late at night, you're putting your nervous system under a lot of strain. You're again in a lot of cortisol, morning and evening, cortisol and adrenaline just pumping in your veins. Now, when you've got cortisol in your blood, that means you're in the sympathetic nervous system state. And when you're in the sympathetic nervous system state, that's S for stress. The stress response in your body is protecting you from danger. And so it's saying, I'm not going to let you sleep now because you might have a marauding tribe or a saber-tooth tiger facing you. So I'm not going to let you sleep. I'm not going to let you feel compassion and empathy if you have to kill these people. I'm not going to let you feel joy and happiness if you're on a battlefield. So I'm not going to produce oxytocin, serotonin, melatonin because this is a dangerous situation. And the body's there to look after you. It's trying to protect you. So it's put you into sympathetic nervous system thinking that that's the best thing for you. And you don't know anything different. So you're just in that state, and you're in that state day in, day out. Now what happens is that high level of cortisol, high level of stimulation on your nervous system, and it doesn't matter what the job is, if you're in that state for long periods of time, which is where a lot of the world is right now, and that's why we're getting a lot of depression, a lot of anxiety, is because a lot of people are still in sympathetic. And then what they're doing is that they're going to see doctors, the doctors are putting them on medication, and they're still in the sympathetic nervous system. And so it's just like, putting a Band-Aid on cancer. And what we need to do is we need to shift people out of the sympathetic into the parasympathetic, the P for peace response. And when we get them into the peace response, everything changes in their biochemistry. So when I started meditating, my oxytocin, my serotonin, my melatonin started to go back into my bloodstream, and the cortisol started to just turn off. And then I started operating from a much more peaceful and much more successful place, and affects your brain, your biochemistry, and your body. So that's the first ground zero we have to address with everyone that's currently in the stress response in the world right now. It's like, it's one thing to medicate, but it's more important that we get their body out of that sympathetic nervous system, whatever modality you find the best one for you. For me, I found meditation was the most effective. There's other ways to do that, but for me, meditation was the most efficient, most effective.
Coming back to anxiety, what's your viewpoint on anxiety and depression now? I mentioned to you before, anxiety's played a part of my life, and I struggled with it for a long period of time, and I've seen anxiety as such a bad thing. You mentioned, the universe will put you on the trajectory that you need to be on, and it may come up in physical things like anxiety, depression, stuff like that. I 100% agree with that, because me struggling with anxiety, me seeing it as a bad thing, it debilitated me, and I was like, I can't live life like this. But when I shifted my mindset to, why is this anxiety? Why do I experience anxiety? I now see it as a sign of something that I need to go towards. I need to have that conversation. I need to put myself out of my comfort zone. It's actually a sign from the universe that you need to go out and do something. Yet so many people see it as a negative and see it as debilitating. As soon as you shift your mindset towards these, it doesn't become your identity anymore. Yeah, you may experience anxiety, but what is it trying to tell you? That's a big thing that helped me shift my mindset towards it and allowed me to actually break free from the shackles of anxiety. And I'm sure pretty much the same as you.
Yeah, look, we are here for joy. We're here for calmness. We're here for happiness. And all of these are distortions that have creeped into our society, and we've normalized to them. I did a talk not long ago, and I asked the audience who in the audience is experiencing anxiety, depression, OCD, ADHD, insomnia, adrenal fatigue, restless leg, tapping leg syndrome. 95% of the audience put their hand up, and we've normalized to not having mental health. We've normalized to not having health. We've normalized to not having happiness. And this is the problem with our society. These are the vasanas we just morph into, the collective movement. And what's happening, exactly like you said, it's a cue. Anxiety is a cue to change. And anxiety can come from two ways. One can come from the tendency of your mind, the thoughts that you're having. If you're in this future worry scenario in your thoughts repetitively, that's going to cause the biochemical of cortisol, adrenaline coming into your blood, and it's going to cause worry and fear, which is going to exacerbate eventually into anxiety. So we do need to look at the nature of your mind, bring you back to the present and start living more in the present. And we do need to look at the nature of your body. If your body is in hyperstimulated, not getting enough sleep, on your phone all the time, running around from A to B, taking lots of drugs, drinking, caffeine, all those sorts of things that are putting massive drain on your nervous system and on your body, then we need to look at that, the way you're living, and look at your habits and your patterns of life and see if we can correct some of those as well. But the base level for everyone should be health, happiness, and joy. And anything, like there's moments if, you're getting mugged, then of course you're going to go into a hyper-stress state as you need to respond very quickly to that situation. Do I run or do I fight? And we've got to weigh up very quickly those two scenarios, fight or flee. But most of the time in life, we don't need to make those decisions. And so there's a huge distortion that's happening that we really need to start looking at why have we got that distortion and how do we address that? Because at the moment, we're just kind of living and accepting that this is just a part of our life and it doesn't have to be.
As humans, we overcomplicate everything.
Yeah.
And we're overstimulated, which I believe is leading to all these mental illnesses. How can someone incorporate meditation into their daily practice to slow down? That's essentially what it is, right? Slowing down. And we did one prior to this podcast, 2 to 3 minutes we did. And I said to you, Tom, I felt relaxed, but I felt like I fully couldn't let go. And I know a lot of people struggle with that as well. How can people start meditation, but also get the full effects of it and let go? Like, what is it? Ego? Like, what is it? Like, what are we holding on to?
Before we even go there and before we start inspiring people to meditate, we want to start with the very basis of what drives us into action. Because every moment we have a choice of what we're going to do. And we're always in action. Even if we're sleeping, it's an action. It's something that we're doing. And every day has 24 hours. And every hour has 3 portions of 20 minutes, which means that every day has 72 20-minute pieces of pie. That every person on the planet right now, every single person, whether they're doing crack cocaine in a ghetto in LA, whether they're cleaning the bathroom floor in Penrith, whether they're in a monastery in Tibet, every person's action is motivated by one thing, and that's to find fulfillment. All action is motivated in the quest to find fulfillment. I feel better when my bathroom floor is cleaner. I feel better when I put bottle tops on bottles and I pay my rent. I feel better when I watch my footy team win. I feel better when I go to the gym. I feel better when I sleep. I feel better when I watch Netflix. So every action is motivated in the quest to find fulfillment. And so I ask people, how's that working out for you? And if we don't have fulfillment, if it's not a fist pumping, hell yeah, I feel full of joy, then we've got to assess what we're allocating our time towards. Now, most of the world is currently in what's called outcome-oriented fulfillment, which means that if I can get something or acquire something or experience something, I will have fulfillment. And that drives us with an insatiable appetite to get more, which is why Westfields is full of people shopping right now. And so the outcome-oriented fulfillment, it's got quite a few flaws in it. The problem with outcome-oriented fulfillment is, firstly, the outcomes very rarely meet our expectation. People go to the grand final to watch their team win. 50% of the time, the team's not going to win, which means the outcome of their fulfillment has been taken away from them. If it does meet our expectation, I want a new dress, or I want a new shirt or a new cap. I'm going to go to the shop, and if I buy that, then I'll be more fulfilled. The problem with the outcome and the acquisition is the fulfillment that we derive from it will wear away quite quickly. And so therefore, the fulfillment is only fleeting and very unsustainable, which means we have to go back to another outcome to have more experience, which is what addiction is. And we're all addicted in some way, shape, or form. Now, what we want is self-referred fulfillment, a fulfillment that arises up from within that doesn't have a why. And that self-referred fulfillment is a fulfillment that we have within us that we cultivate through certain practices that change the biochemistry in our body. I had a trader that was from a large investment bank, an American investment bank. He came and learned meditation from me. He contacted me 2 weeks later and says, I don't know what it is, mate, but I feel like I've taken an Ecutap. I said, yeah, what's happened is that when you take MDMA, what happens is you're getting that drug to trigger a huge dump of cortisol, of adrenaline, a huge dump of oxytocin and serotonin into your blood. And that's why you feel the bliss chemicals, because your body has been releasing them into your blood because of the drug that you took. But when you meditate, we get a very regulated small dose of that on a daily basis. And so you're getting now a reduction in cortisol, an increase in serotonin and oxytocin, which are the bliss chemicals, and now you're getting self-referred fulfillment. You're starting to feel good without even asking, why am I feeling good? You're just feeling good. And that's ground zero. That's home base. That's where we should be. And that's something that we can all cultivate. So now we've got a clear understanding about where fulfillment lives. Where can I find fulfillment? And where can I be sovereign in my fulfillment, regardless of the outcomes of life? And that's where we get sovereignty. It's where we get freedom. Now, meditation being one of the best ways for us to do that. Now, I take a very holistic approach to health and wellness. So I go to the gym 3 times a week. I do yoga, breath work, saunas, ice baths, meditation. All of those contribute to me being in a self-referred state of fulfillment, regardless of circumstances. But I find meditation one of the most effective. So now that I've sold you meditation, now we've got to go back to our 24 hours, our 72 20-minute portions of pie, and go, okay, what am I allocating my 72 20-minute portions of pie towards? I'm allocating them to finding fulfillment, but it's not quite working out for me. I'm not quite fulfilled. So maybe if I take 1 or 2 of them out every day and make them unconditional, because this is what I did. Okay, well, I'll put 1 in the morning before brekkie when I wake up. I'll put 1 in the afternoon before dinner. 20 minutes twice a day, 1 in the morning, 1 in the afternoon. And then if I find fulfillment through that process, the other 70 20-minute pieces of pie that I'm allocating my time towards, I kind of just cream on the cake. I don't have to try and extract fulfillment out of those other 70 20-minute pieces of pie because I've already found it and cultivated it through my meditation practice. So now you're what we say, yogastha kuru kamani, which means established in being or in fulfillment, then go into action. Most people are going into action to find fulfillment, but action from fulfillment, not for fulfillment, is a very different source of action.
That is interesting. Yeah, as you said, we are chasing that fulfillment. But through meditation, you're not expecting to get anything. You're sitting with yourself, building a connection, a relationship with yourself. And in that is the fulfillment.
Yeah, that's right. And if you look at anyone that's enlightened, and I love the book, I don't know if you've heard of it, The Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell.
Yeah, I've heard of it.
Right. It's all about, for those that haven't heard of it, it's a book that explores people that were outliers in our society, people that excelled more than other people. And what they found in their research was that there was this 10,000 hour principle, which said if someone like Tiger Woods or Donald Bradman spent 10,000 hours more than someone else hitting a golf ball or a cricket ball, or, David Beckham trying to curve that ball into the top right-hand corner of that goal for an extra 2 hours after training when everyone went home, they're just going to get better and better at whatever they're doing. And if we look at the people that are enlightened, which have this beautiful, rich arising of fulfillment within them, a beautiful sense of inner peace, the only difference between that person and a person that doesn't have that is the 10,000 hour principle. They've just allocated more time towards it. We allocate a lot more time to scrolling on feeds, to shopping, to watching footy, going to the pub. And we've just gotten good at those things. But we just got to ask, how's that working out for us? And not that we have to completely shut ourselves off from the world, but just tweak our day a little bit. I still enjoy the delights of life, but it's just about getting clearer about how do I optimize my human experience? Because let's just give one crack at this and do a really damn good job of it and optimize the state that we're in. Then you'll find that it's a lot easier to allocate and give preferential treatment to certain times in your day to your health and wellness.
And your health is the foundation of success. If you're focusing on your health, you're doing training, meditation, you're going to be in a better headspace, which means you're going to be able to enjoy the pleasures of life a lot more.
Absolutely.
You're not going to be riddled with anxiety, depression, all these other mental illnesses because you're on top of it. You're working on it each and every day. And I speak into mental fitness. So the way I break it up is we all have mental health. That's our baseline. Below that's mental illness. On the top's mental fitness. That's where we should be striving for every day. Yeah, we're going to have dips. We're going to go up and down. That's life. But if we can implement meditation, exercise, good water, nutrition, those little things that compound over time, how much better will you feel?
Yeah.
I got up and went for a run this morning. I felt amazing after. Like, how good do you feel after you train? Because it releases all those chemicals. Yet so many people are getting up and the first thing they do is check their phone. Then they got a screaming baby or whatever. Like, there's so much stimulation as soon as they wake up, they don't take the time to be with themselves and find that inner fulfillment. We're chasing external fulfillment.
I always find, if you look at the analogy of the tree, and before the tree grows up, the tree grows down.
Yeah.
And the reason it grows down is twofold. One is to get nutrients so that the upward direction of its growth will have a source of nourishment. And the second reason why it grows down is that as it grows up, it will have a root base to hold it firm during difficult times. And for most of us, we just look at the outside world. We do inquiry, we're inquiring all over ourselves, all over life, phones, emails, Netflix, Spotify. And we're not doing a lot of inquiry, looking inward and stabilizing a deeper connection to ourselves. And I think for a daily basis practice, the first thing and the best thing we can do is get that deep root system inside of us to really connect into a knowingness of who we are. Then when you get challenges through the day, and you will, life is difficult, life throws all sorts of crazy shit at us. And it just gives us greater capacity when that storm and tempest come, that we've got something holding us, deeply rooted in that stable place.
And coming back to my question before around meditation and not being able to fully let go, what is that? Is it ego? How do we let go, or is it just come with time, putting in those 10,000 hours that you kind of get good at it?
It's important. You mentioned an important word, which is the ego. And our identity is the ego. And the thing is, the ego, it doesn't really care that you're having anxiety. In fact, it likes that you're having anxiety because it makes it more about you, the ego. And so the ego, in meditation, it's the death of the ego. There's a beautiful quote from Adyashanti, who's got a book called The End of Your World. And what he's talking about is the end of your ego. And he says enlightenment is a destructive process. It's a fiery furnace of hell for the ego. And there's another book called I Hope You Die Soon by Richard Sylvester. And he's talking about your ego, because the ego is the thing that is where all your addictions live, and all your fears and all your phobias and all your self-sabotage and all your unworthiness and all your shame and all your guilt. But your very essence of being, your inner nature, it's beyond that. And for the ego, it will fight tooth and nail during meditation sometimes to not lose itself. And so, we want to start observing, who am I? Am I the ego, or is there something deeper, more profound, beyond my thinking mind and feeling body? And that's a big part of the transcending meditation that I teach, to transcend the thinking mind, to transcend your feeling emotional body. Because the ego doesn't care that you're feeling misery. It just allows it to feel more alive when it has that, more alive when you're angry, more alive when you have anxiety. And so the biggest challenge a lot of meditators have is to surrender that attachment to their identity. And I always say to them, are you ready to be no thing, no one, and nowhere? Because when you're ready, then you can start deep diving into meditation.
So ego good or bad?
It's something that we want to, it's neither good or bad. It just is.
Yeah.
It just is. And we want to be able to identify it first. There it is. I see you. And it's okay to live alongside with it, as we will. For me, I still have ego. We have our divine essence, getting into more spiritual sort of understanding. A lot of the world identifies with their physical, mental, and emotional identity. The physical being the most obvious because it's the densest. Our emotional being the next obvious because it's the feeling body. It's what we feel in the body. And that's what motivates our actions and our thoughts, because we want to get the feelings. Doesn't really matter what the feelings are as long as we've got some feelings, right? And then the thinking mind, which is your mental body. But we have a fourth dimension, and most people ignore that because it's so subtle. And that's our spiritual. We're spiritual, mental, emotional, and physical. And most of the world is ignoring the spiritual at the moment because it's just not obvious. It's not so apparent. And to get to it, we have to transcend the physical, mental, and emotional. A lot of people aren't ready to let go of that, particularly with Instagram now, where we can get selfies. And so most of us are very obsessed about how we look and how we feel. And so transcending that in meditation and experiencing, wow, I'm actually not the physical body, I'm not the mental mind, and I'm not the feeling body. I'm actually something bigger than that. And a lot of people come out of my meditations and they're like, where did I just go? Like, that was amazing. I don't know where that was, but that was incredible. I want to go back there. And they can't localize it. They can't identify the place for it because it actually isn't in a locality. It's in a subtler field than that. And that's the spiritual existence, the divine, or some will call it source or higher self.
Do you feel like the resistance to the ego is because when you transcend, you not remove the, or you detach from the ego a bit, the truth comes out? A lot of stuff that you may have bottled down there comes out and people are scared to actually confront it. Do you feel like that plays a role in it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, particularly in our retreats, we do a lot of processes to help clear that stuff out of the body. A lot of those energies get trapped in the body and they're sensations that we never wanted to experience, which is why we push them down. We generally release the positive emotions, energy in motion. So that's what emotion is. It's the energy in motion moving through our body. So the positive ones like laughter, we'll express that because it's a nice feeling. We want to feel that. But the more challenging sensations, the more darker, heavier ones, maybe we don't want to feel those ones. So we might push those down: anger, fear, shame, guilt. And they're still residing down in the body. So it's quite physiological. It's quite somatic to actually get that out. So breath work, some yoga, some meditation. We do a sequence that allows the unraveling and the releasing. And it gets a little bit messy when that comes out. There's some movement of that energy as that clears out through the body. We just had a retreat in Greece. That's why I got this bit of a crackly throat. And that was a couple of weeks ago. And there was, a lot of people with emotional clearing coming out of the body. We go, let that come out. You've been holding that in there for so long. Let that come out. Allow yourself the sensation as that moves itself out of the body and releases itself energetically. Once it's physically released, it's gone.
I've had a deep experience myself with breath work. It was like a breath work meditation, and it was about half an hour long we did. I went to a whole new place and a lot of emotions came up that I dealt with, and I had like visions and stuff like that around my dad and my relationship with him. And afterwards, like I was like shaking, my nervous system is like, and I think they said it's like your nervous system's accepting what's happened and it's processing it and you're letting go, like you're moving energy throughout your body. And after that, I felt like a weight was lifted off my shoulders. I was like, wow, the power of 30 minutes to go that deep into something that we can all do in breathe and meditate can have such a positive impact on your life. It's actually crazy.
Yeah. And so simple, like you said, just breath and a bit of quietness of the mind. Like that combination is so powerful. We incorporate a little bit of yoga as well, which helps unlock a lot of the energy points in the hips, the neck, the back, where a lot of those energies are stressed. They're stored, knees, ankles. We do a lot of sort of openness of those to help facilitate the movement of that energy.
I'd be interested, have you gone down the route of psychedelics at all?
It's interesting. It's a good question. I haven't found it's my path, partly because pre-meditation, I sort of have my life, which is BM and AM, before meditation and after meditation.
Yep.
So BM life, I did a lot of drugs, all sorts of drugs, you name them all. And some of them I had really quite severe psychedelic freakouts when I was doing acid that left me quite sort of affected for quite a long time. A couple of years. One of them was a pretty bad psychological blowout, really, on some pretty nasty acid. And when the plant medicines came onto the scene and people were talking about their ayahuasca experiences and psilocybin and the tripping and stuff like that, I can see the merit in it for people. I can see why it's a healthy pathway. And I think there's a reason why these are emerging into our society, just like breath work, just like yoga, just like meditation. These ancient modalities that have been locked up for many, many thousands of years are now coming into the mainstream for a reason. It just didn't feel like it was my path for me. And I've spent 27 years in the path of meditation. And so with all respect to them and acknowledgement of them, it just didn't seem the right path for me.
It's just a different tool, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
And I feel like you get very much the similar effects. So I've experimented with mushrooms, and I had a trip which was interesting. I wouldn't say it was positive or really negative. It was really weird, to be honest. And part of me kind of freaked out. I was like, am I ever going to come out of this world? I felt like I was in a different universe. And I'll be honest, it was the first time in a long time that I was actually scared. I was like, whoa, this is crazy. But a lot of emotions came up, and that was a big part of why I was scared, because I had to confront them. What I realized, a big part of what came to me was everything's connected. Every thought, every action. When you experience psychedelics or you go into a really deep meditation, you realize this whole universe we're in is one. It's all connected. Yet society separates all these different parts, which I believe why we're so disconnected, why we're struggling with mental health and mental illness. It's because we haven't realized the connection. We're just worrying about all these different little pieces instead of putting the pieces of the puzzle together. So that was a very interesting experience that I had, and something that I would definitely do down the track a lot more. But for me, meditation is something that I want to get a lot more into as well, and which is why I wanted to have you on today, because I wanted to learn from you. So I can incorporate that into my daily life and then pass it on to other people within my circle too.
Yeah, look, there's so many wonderful merits with many of these modalities and pathways. One thing that I think is really important to integrate into all of those, no matter which ones we're using, is can you sit in the silence of being? And that's when we really truly find ourselves. Who are you without a thought? Who are you without an emotion? And that's an integral part in the journey of waking up, I think, and realizing the full gamut of what it is to be human. And that's when we start to really, there's a lot of requirement to clear out, and that's where your breath work and even your psychedelics and all that sort of stuff and plant medicines can play a big part in clearing, purging, and it's an important part of the process. We've really got to look at the body and the physiology and how a lot of that's stored in the body and do that hard, gritty work to get that out. And as well as that, we also need to start looking at, can we sit in that silence and stillness? And that's such an important part of the full gamut of what it is to be human. So that's one of my inspirations, is to bring this into the world, into the masses, and inspire people to have the practice of sitting in meditation and surrendering into that. It's a big surrender.
You mentioned stillness and thoughts. Can people think meditation, you got to just be like, have no thoughts, no emotions, anything like that? Is there a place you can get to without having thoughts, or you're always going to have thoughts?
During the process, there'll be many, many thoughts in the meditation. As time goes on, you'll get more aware of what the experience is beyond thoughts. And this is what we call being. And the analogy I like to use is that, you know how you're in a plane, say it's a really grey day. It's a very cloudy day and it's just grey sky. And you get in a plane and you're flying up and you go through the clouds and then you pierce through the clouds. Wow, it's just blue sky. Now, the sky was always there. And that's the stillness of being, the silence in the mind is always there. It's just behind the thoughts. And so when we are in the meditation, particularly in the early days, meditation, from what a lot of people are thinking, is that it's about sitting there with no thoughts. It's not what meditation, it can be that. The technique I teach, we use a mantra, and they get their own personal mantra in the workshop based upon when they were born. And that mantra takes the mind deeper. You don't have to do the work. The mantra does the work for you. It's like a primordial resonance or vibration that they repeat very effortlessly inside their head without moving their tongue or their lips. So they say it silently inside their mind, and then the gentle repetition of that sound leads the mind deeper and deeper into that silence. So the beautiful thing about that technique is that it gets them into transcendence, into the silence much more quickly. But if you just sit there and try and empty the mind, it's very, very difficult, because the mind doesn't want to be empty. The mind wants to think. That's the nature of the mind. So we take the mind using the mantra deeper and deeper and lure it with an enticement come and explore something even more profound than thoughts. And that's anyone that's enticed by something more charming will go, look, that was interesting here, but I'd rather go over there because this sounds more enticing, whatever that enticement is. And that's kind of what the mantra does. It just inspires the mind to go deeper and quieter. Now, eventually, when we find the pathway to that stillness and silence more familiar and we get more stabilized in that state, then we can sit in that for long periods of time with no thoughts and no feelings, for sure.
That's interesting. The way that I was kind of introduced into meditation was this analogy of, imagine you're laying under a tree and you're looking up at the blue sky and you see the clouds. Every cloud is a thought.
Mm-hmm.
So you watch your thought come and go, come and go. You don't attach to that thought. You just let it come and go. And that's something that helped me a lot when it came to meditation. Now, I'm not perfect. I haven't done the 10,000 hours, but do you feel that's a good analogy that people could take on board?
It's definitely one type of meditation you could do. You know, there's so many different ways and techniques that we can use to try to calm the mind. The one with that one is that we're going to continually have thoughts and you're going to continue to observe the thoughts.
Yeah.
So it won't necessarily be that you'll still the mind into stillness and silence. The thing with stillness and silence is that there's a quality in it that is very blissful. And the mind will surrender the thinking and surrender mantra because it's found the ultimate source of bliss. It's found the sweet nectar of pure consciousness. So it's a conscious state of awareness and pure in that it's not tainted with future and past thoughts or good and bad, right and wrong thoughts. And it has a quality that's very blissful. When the mind drops into that state of pure consciousness, it's so profound and beautiful. The biochemistry shifts quite dramatically into this beautiful, blissful biochemistry. And it's such a sweet experience that the mind spontaneously doesn't even want to think. It just goes, well, thinking becomes quite inconsequential compared to the bliss that I've already found here.
With meditation, how do we integrate that into...
What the fuck is that?
Stupid bird. That is really distracting. Is that distracting you?
No, it's fine. It's like a lizard or a cricket.
Yeah, and not heard that before. Hope you can't hear that in the audio. If you can, it is what it is. So how do we integrate... Oh, there we go, stopped. How do we integrate meditation past the actual point of doing meditation? So we do our 20 minutes a day, twice a day. But how do we continue with that blissful, conscious mindset and not get hijacked by society, by life?
Yeah, the integration outside of meditation is a really good question. And it's a challenge because most of our life is just day-to-day living, you know, dealing with the logistics of dealing with circumstances, situations. Some of them meet our expectations, some of them don't. And they're going to affect us. They're going to buffer up against us. They're going to influence us. And we're in this outcome-oriented state where good things happen, I feel good. Bad things happen, I feel bad. Meditation over time will give you greater and greater sovereignty and a stability to be in the world, but not thrown around by it. This is called moksha. Moksha means freedom from the binding effects of life. And moksha is the byproduct of regular, consistent meditation, where no matter what's happening in the world, we have greater capacity to be sovereign in our state and unmoved or unaffected. Now, it's not going to happen straight away. I still get, if I'm running late for a plane, trust me, you'll see me not being in moksha. And so there are times when more extreme circumstances and situations will have a stronger traction on your state. But over time, you'll have greater capacity to be more sovereign and more free from those influences and effects.
Yeah, so it all comes down to putting in the time and the practice. Because yeah, for me, I've done meditation before, and if I've been interrupted, I've cracked the shits. And it's like, what's the whole point of doing meditation? Is to be blissful, and then you just go total opposite.
You get greater adaptive capacity as a meditator. So no matter what happens, unmet unmet expectations, things you weren't planning on, you have greater ability to just adapt and go, oh, that's interesting. That's fascinating. I'll just adapt with that.
I seen on your Instagram, there was a post and the quote was, we need to be cautious of the trap of spiritual hedonism. What is that?
At least someone reads my post. Spiritual hedonism is an extension of the hedonism that we have in our current life. we initially start with just trying to get the basics of life sorted, which is, have I got shelter, and have I got food, and have I got companionship? Now, once we've ticked that box, which most of us in this world have, 99.999% of the world have those boxes ticked. I've got family, friends, I've got a shelter, and I've got food at my disposal. The next thing we move towards is pleasure. Where can I find pleasure? And so now we have, ourselves seeking pleasure. We've become really good as a society in creating ways to extract pleasure out of life. Netflix, Spotify, ice cream, pubs, you name it. Pleasure is something that we're deep in pleasure seeking, and that's hedonism, where we have this insatiable appetite for more pleasure. If you go to a supermarket, 90% of the food in that supermarket is for pleasure, not for nutritional value. And that just is purely indicative of the hedonistic society that we're in. And that's morphing as well into the spiritual community, I'm noticing as well. We've come across these incredible techniques and modalities that give us more pleasure. And so now I can take, microdosing or psilocybin and there's nothing wrong with these modalities. It's when we exploit them. I can see the merit in those practices, even meditation. There's a degree of pleasure seeking seeping into the spiritual community, which is dependency on these modalities to get the next high, to get the next hit. What we've got to be careful of is that we don't fall into that trap of addiction in pleasure seeking in spirituality. There is already a high within us, which is our divine nature. It is already blissful. What we've got to let go of is the thing that's not already high, to find what we already are, which is high. And as long as we're in the trappings of the ego, we'll have an insatiable appetite, whether we're in the spiritual practice or not. And I'd even notice it myself because I had a lot of addictions and I could feel and observe myself getting caught up in where do I get the next high from? And the big thing I ask my students is, are you ready to let go of all of that seeking? Because there's a part of you that's already high. There's a part of you that's already enlightened. It's already there. The blue sky exists with that there's clouds in there or not. And the big question is, are you ready to surrender and experience that? Because then you'll really truly find bliss, not just in the seeking of another practice or another modality, but in the nature of who you are as a being.
Yeah, it begs the question, why are they seeking it so much? Why are they seeking the quick dopamine hit, the quick fix? I experienced this with personal development. You feel like you got to go to all these events and seminars because you're going to learn so much. You're going to be a different person. You go to a Tony Robbins, you're fucking jumping up in the air for a couple of days, and then you come back to real life. You're the same person. Yeah, you may have learned a few things. You did a little bit of work on yourself. But at the end of the day, you're the same person. And what I realized was, yes, these tools are great, but you got to do the work on yourself. You got to look yourself in the mirror and ask yourself the hard questions, because that's where the truth lies. These tools are just a bonus on top of it. Yeah, so many people get trapped in seeking, fulfillment through, going to all these events or doing meditation so many times, 5 hours a day or whatever. What's the root cause? Why are you actually seeking that? Is a good question that I feel everyone should ask themselves.
It's a really careful thing, and because while you're speaking, I thought, okay, I better add something here, because a lot of listeners might be starting to switch off and go, look, I don't want that boring life. And so to add to that, we still want to enjoy life.
Yep.
We came here to smell the roses. We did actually come here to eat ice cream. That's why we manifest from the infinite field of nothing and everything into form and phenomenon to have this. It's called Lila, L-I-L-A, the dance of the divine, to have this dance, to have the human experience, to hold a child, to rub a dog's belly, to, surf a wave, to watch a sunset, to make love, to go to the movies. We have come here for these experiences. So it's important we relish them and experience them, but just not get owned by them. So we don't want to, if it's not for you, go and live in a monastery. If it's not for you, then live the full life, live the full gamut, but don't ignore an important part of what it is to be human, which is to incorporate your spiritual experience as well. So my retreats are less about, can I get them to a high? Can I clear out the aspects of them that's blocking them from feeling the high that they already have within them? So a lot of the practice is about clearing, transcending, going beyond. And then along the way, let's have a really beautiful meal and enjoy the gorgeousness of life as well.
You mentioned manifesting.
Mm.
The secret that came out, everyone thought you could just sit on your lounge and say, I want to be rich, and it would happen. Can we actually manifest our desired life or our goals? Do you feel so?
Design the studio?
Yeah.
Did you have a thought to design the studio before you designed the studio?
I did, yeah.
Yeah. And is the studio manifested now?
Yes, it's probably better.
It is, right? So we know that it's manifested. And then we know that there was an intention to manifest it before it was manifested. This glass here is manifested, correct?
Yeah.
Did someone before it was manifested have an intention to manifest the glass?
Probably.
It had to.
Yeah.
It could not be physically built without someone designing it before they designed it. Because that had to go to the designer to say, I want it to look like this. Okay, I need it to look like that. Now, this coaster is manifested. Now, it has a soft furriness on the bottom and then has some leather on the top with some white stitching around the side with some words in the middle. That had to be designed first. Now, before the design, which was before it became physical, there was the intention, a thought process to manifest this. We're manifesting all day, every day. The hat that you're wearing, you chose to wear that hat. You chose to buy that hat. There was a manifestation process that happened. I need a new hat. First thought, where do I go for the new hat? What sort of hat do I want? That hat looks good. We're always manifesting. Most people just don't realize it. And when we start to get more and more powerful and more and more potent at it, we start to realize that, wow, we are part of the quantum field. Like you said, that matrix, you start to see the matrix. The more we meditate, the more we get into that subtle layer, we start realizing, holy moly, there's a field of magnetism and a quantum mechanical field that I'm part of, and that everything that's manifesting out of it is part of an intention of thought fields and intentions and desires. And you can play with that. And so getting intentional about the process of manifesting as opposed to just manifesting is what leads us to greatness. You know, running a retreat in Greece started with a thought. Having a film made started with a thought. And before it was a thought, it was an intention, a desire, an impulse that arises. So we can create quite remarkable lives, but we've got to get out of the recurring thought forms that we have, the limited thought tracks, the vasanas I talked about, expand our mind, have that critical thinking, and start really exploring, what do you want to build? What do you want to create? What do you be like? Who do you want to become? What do you want to look like? Not look physically, but the life you want to live. What does that look like?
And backing it up with action.
And then backing up.
Not just yelling in the mirror, no, I want to achieve this, or I want to be confident, like all these affirmations that, yes, are great, they play their part, but like in self-confidence, for example, yes, you can have affirmations all in your mirror and you can yell them to yourself like they say, but by you going out and taking action and doing the things that you say that you want to do, inherently you gain confidence off the back of that. So it all comes down to action at the end of the day.
Yeah, there's a great guy called Patrick Groves, and you can look him up on YouTube. There's a video clip of him being interviewed by Vishen Lakhiani from Mind Valley. And I spoke to Patrick. He's a beautiful man, good man. And Vishen ran into him. He was in a Starbucks with a notepad, and he had on the top of the notepad, how to make $100 million. And Vishen stopped him and said, what are you doing there? He says, I'm trying to work out how I can make $100 million. And he would do this regularly. He would sit down and he would map out the how-to. And he did it on how to make $100 million. He made $100 million. How to make $1 billion. He made $1 billion. Now he's working on how to make $1 trillion or something like that, crazy. And so he gets into the granular of the how-to. And I think there's something really be valuable about that said is that it's one thing to have the intention to create a certain life, but can you create the how-to as well?
Mm. And I think anyone can create the how-to these days with the amount of information and knowledge that we have.
Yeah.
And then the manifesting on top of it, you can achieve so much.
Yeah, it's amazing some of these stories out there, 21-year-old kids, 15-year-old kids, running six-figure salaries, $1 million salaries, businesses that they've popped up on the internet. If they've got an iPhone and a laptop, the world's their oyster these days. It's quite remarkable.
I see that you work with conscious leaders. What is a conscious leader?
It's someone that's awake, that's aware of all of these things that we're talking about. They're being so familiar and so down that path that they have a level of consciousness that's quite deep and quite vast, and they want to go into leadership. So it's one thing to awaken our mind and experience that depth and that vastness of awareness, but then to go into leadership, that is people that want to pave the way forward for other people to find a pathway. They could be breath workers, yoga teachers, meditation teachers, healers, nutritionists, psychologists, people that really want to make a difference in people's lives, that are struggling with their businesses, that need some support to get the structures, the mindset, the know-how. So a lot of that's the how-to, helping them with the how-to.
And that's what you do? You're aligned with?
Yeah, it's through either one-on-one coaching or through the Zen Academy, which is a 12-week coaching program for conscious leaders. So we focus on one theme every week from, might be their website, how to build a beastful website that works for you. A lot of people have got nice woo-woo websites, but they're not really working for them.
Mm-hmm.
How to master your social media so that you can not just get your self out to the world and positioned as an authority in this space, but also to utilize social media to develop relationships, heart-centered relationship building, how to build a retreat, how to be a keynote speaker, how to get an online program, how to get a book written and published, everything and anything to do with building out their business.
I love the integration of business and the spiritual side, because I feel it allows you to go a lot further in life, and you're a lot more fulfilled and happier, and you can have a bigger impact. You can see some of the top business owners in the world who are conscious, the massive impact that they're having.
I look at Jay Shetty.
Oh, it is amazing.
The Gabby Bernstein, these people are running extremely successful businesses and they're integrating, because if you look back 20, 40, 50 years, spiritual leaders were usually monks. Paramahansa Yogananda, Ramana Maharshi, Sri Sri Nanamema, and they were backed by a spiritual practice and a deep sort of array of donation-based sort of support. And so just in the last 10 years, we've had spiritual leaders now running successful businesses with, value exchange being made for their offerings. And so it's a whole new paradigm, and a lot of people coming through with that inclination to be spiritual leaders or conscious leaders, maybe struggling with the business side of things. And so helping them with that, it's an important step.
Talk to me about fatherhood and how important it is as a conscious leader to pass on those lessons and your wisdom down to your kids.
Yeah, I love being a father. Yeah, it's such an honor. It's a gift, and it's a joy. Something that I love a lot.
And they're twins, aren't they?
Yeah.
How old?
21-year-old twins, a boy and a girl.
Yeah, okay.
Lauren.
My daughter's nearly 2.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's good times ahead for you. Yeah, fatherhood's. I was at this dinner a while ago, and there was 6 of my mates, and we would have these men's catch-ups. And everyone at the table was between 45 and 55. And we're all sitting there having a good chat and a good dinner. We'd have these regular conscious men's catch-ups. And I was the only one married with kids. And I said to them, what I feel is inspiring for my masculinity more than anything is being a father. They were kind of shocked. They were like, what are you talking about? I said, yeah, there's something so rich and nourishing and beautiful about holding space for that family, creating that container, and being kind of wacky dad, then being responsible, disciplined dad, then being wise dad, then being chef dad. There's so many different roles and characteristics you play as a father, and I love the color of all of that. But more than anything, I love the responsibility of inspiring a generation of people to come behind us to be the custodians. And, my kids are always pulling me up. And I think I'm pretty kind of, switched on, but they're like, damn, you got me again. That was, I came back from the beach one day, and I like to go to the beach early for sunrise to my practice, and I walked in and the kids were at this when they were still at school. I remember walking in and I said, it was during El Nino, and I walked in, I said, guys, it is a perfect summer's day. Like, it is unbelievable down there. And my son said, Dad, we're in El Nino. If this was a perfect summer's day, it would be raining right now. I'm like, okay, that's a really good point. And they have this capacity to take in the macro world more. I was just thinking it's great for my day. Good for me, because I just had a surf and the water's amazing. But he was thinking, and they just default to this. We had a red-bellied black snake at the farm the other day, because it literally was on my Instagram feed the other day. It was just 3-4 days ago. And the first inclination was to get a shovel. It's dangerous. We've got a dog, and, you just don't know what it's going to do. Don't want my wife to tread on it. And I got the shovel, I said, what do you reckon? My son, he was the one who saw it. I came to the rescue. And my first inclination is protect the family. We're going to take it out. He said, Dad, you can't take the snake out. A, it's protected species and you get fined. You knew all the rules. And he said, B, it's no harm to us. Just let him go on his way. I'm like, have you caught me again? So they teach me more lessons than I teach them, I reckon.
Is there a lot of pressure on you as a man to, especially maybe when they were younger, to provide and be the best version of yourself for them?
Yeah, absolutely. Particularly the providing. I think all men would feel that. Women as well these days. I know that's balanced a lot more. And I don't want to specifically give one person that responsibility in the world that we're in today, but it's a lot for men and women, for parents to have to fund that whole container and to provide, electricity bills, car regos, rent, mortgage, whatever it is, food every week, rising costs, mortgages going up. It's an intense process. And that's why I said to that group of guys, I said, this is a really incredible responsibility as a man to hold that container and be responsible for that container. Literally, I just came off a mentoring session with one of my clients just 2 hours ago, and she was grappling with her partner that won't commit to a marriage and familyhood because he said he's got too many responsibilities right now and he doesn't want more. And I can understand why he thinks that way. It's not my thinking, but he's at this point thinking, I'm already burdened and I don't want more burden. And unfortunately, he's seeing family as that way. I see that as a support system. And I see that as a great gift and an offering, something to be really grateful for, that you've got this incredible unit that will stand by you. We've gone through difficult times. I had some not such good investments that were financially poor choices. And, to have that support unit there to say, we'll live at a 10 if we have to. We're not walking out on this. We'll eat baked beans if we have to. We'll get through this as a unit. And I think there's something that a lot of guys disregard, that the richness of what that unit is when we hold space for it. Yeah, we'll pay back for you.
I can definitely feel that. But my biggest responsibility is my family, and I wouldn't have it any other way. It's my big driving force for me to do what I do, is because I'm being a role model for my daughter. I'm setting the foundations for her to be successful, to be the best version of herself. But that all starts with me being the best version of me. We got to lead by example as men, and it's a massive responsibility. There's days where we are going to stuff up. We're going to slip up. But then we're human, right?
Yeah, I think I talk a lot about this lately these days because I'm seeing this more and more clearly, that there are certainly cultures and societies where they will give preferential treatment to the relationship over the family. And if that relationship's not working out in affection in the ideal way, or maybe there's some fallibility, maybe someone's made a mistake, and this is just going to happen in relationships, that we're not perfect, we make mistakes, we do things wrong, we screw up. But there's some people that will prioritize the family unit over everything and say, we're not going to throw the baby out with the bathwater. We're going to keep that unit together. We're going to work through this, because we see the family unit as the most powerful structure that we want to keep giving nourishment to. Whereas I look, particularly in America, there's this tendency to let that whole thing fall apart for someone's misdemeanor. And look, we need to obviously learn from our mistakes and be better human beings. And I'm certainly not perfect. And we've had a long, beautiful, rich journey together in our family unit. And, we prioritize. I'm blessed to have a partner that also sees the family unit as a really high value. And we both have a really sense of deep appreciation for the value of the family unit. So my wife's parents are still together, and they've still got this family unit, and my parents are still together. So we've got that tradition that's come through. And so family is something that I see the falling apart of a family. Now, if there's violence and domestic abuse, then there's a very good reason why we need to get out of that situation. But I think we're very quick in our society to collapse that family unit and to see it disintegrate. And the long-term ramifications of that are quite substantial. Now, I'm not saying anyone that has left their family unit and broken up their relationship in that family shouldn't have done that, because every situation needs to be assessed individually. Definitely some situations, they're just not meant to be together. That's just a reality. We need to adapt and we need to move on. We need to live a better life. But I think there's so much to be said about trying to stay together and work through those difficult times and keep that unit together. And I think in our society, we're really underestimating the value of what it is to keep families together.
It's something that I'm currently experiencing since my daughter's been born. It's been up and down, as you probably experienced when your kids were first born. It's quite tough adapting to parenthood and us moving out of home for the first time and bills and jobs and all that kind of stuff. It's been testing. It's been challenging. There's plenty of fights, plenty of arguments, but sticking together no matter what and working through it, I feel like you got to do it. But there's also a fine line of don't stick together for the sake of sticking together and have a toxic relationship and a toxic energy within the house. So I know firsthand what that's like with my own family, and I don't want that for my little family now. So I'm referring to my parents. It's a fine line between them. Like, yes, you want to stay together and have the family for your kids, but you also don't want to be together and be toxic, because what example are you to your children of what a relationship should be like?
And this is where our practices come in. And so what we're talking about is, it's really important we clarify this for a lot of people listening, because we're not saying stay in a toxic relationship. What we're saying is, what are you both doing to commit to your personal development? Because your relationship and the family unit is an extension of the state of being that you're in. And a lot of us aren't really addressing our state of being. We're just finger pointing, saying, you're the cause of this, you're the problem, you're this. We need to start to recalibrate, reset, and be, like you said before, be a better version of yourself. The relationship is an extension of that. It's a container that your consciousness, your state of being goes into. And it's a container that has your partner's state of being. And then, of course, as an extension of that, your children's as well. So your children will grow through osmosis by watching you two. And we need to, as parents, ideally make sure that we have both a proactive commitment to evolving as a human being, to becoming better as a human being, to having practices and modalities. Like they say in the airplane, if the plane's going down, make sure you put your face mask on first. It's not selfish to put time aside, and you both should be supporting each other to have your practices, go on retreats, do your breath work, have time out for your meditation. Quite often my kids of my, the mothers of my children or dads of, kids of my students would often say to my students, Mum, I think you better go and meditate. And, they appreciate the benefits of when the parents are meditating. So that's something that we've got to, as a society, look at the relationship structure, but look at the individuals that are in the relationship structure. That's really important.
And it comes down to building that relationship with yourself, so then you can come together as a family unit, as a relationship there. Because there's so many relationships where that one person's dependent on the other to fill their own cup up. And if that person leaves, they're like, I can't live without you. And this messy love thing, and it kind of taints love as a bad thing. But in fact, the person just hasn't built that relationship with themselves to be able to have a relationship with someone else. So at the end of the day, it all starts with self.
Yeah, and I always say to people that come to me complaining about their partner, before we get into their partner, I ask them, what are you doing on a daily basis that is your own personal practice that could potentially inspire them to embrace their own personal practice, to start to have a more unified experience with you? Oh, wow, that thing you're doing looks pretty cool. I might try that as well. And then eventually, if they start to embrace some practices that you've inspired them to embrace to start to improve their own state, then maybe you'll be finger pointing at them less, because they'll start to evolve and grow themselves. But it's got to start with someone's got to inspire those people in that relationship. It's like when Harry met Sally in the cafe scene and she's having that fake orgasm, and the two old ladies go, I want what she's having. Mm-hmm. It just looked good. And we want to be inspirational as a leader in our relationship by inspiring people to start saying, hey, this thing that you're doing on a daily basis, I feel kind of isolated that I'm not doing it, and maybe I should come along and check this thing out, what you're doing. It looks really cool.
Yeah, it's not about also some people have high expectations of their partners on what they should be doing. And reality is the more you do that, the further away they go. So you focus on building that relationship with yourself. You know, if you're doing your meditation twice a day and they see that, they're like, oh, okay. And you're coming out of that with bliss and happiness and joy. I want a part of that.
Yeah.
You inspire, which is exactly what you said. And a lesson that I have learnt the hard way. I'm someone that wants to give all the answers and help and try and force someone to be on the same path that I am. But I realized we're all on our own journeys. We're all on our own paths. And by me living my own life, if I can inspire someone else to even pick a little part of it out that helps their life and benefits them, job's done.
Yeah.
As long as we're happy, we're fulfilled, we're not chasing material things. Like, yes, it's great to have that, but you got to be fulfilled in here first. That's the most important part.
That's the ripple effect that you talk about before.
That's it. Tom, this has been an amazing conversation. We've been going for about an hour and a half now. So thank you so much for your time. Where can the people find out more about yourself and if they want to learn about meditation?
Well, why don't we just finish with giving them a little 2-minute guided meditation so they can walk away with a technique that they can integrate on a daily basis if things are a bit overwhelming at the moment and a bit stressed. Because what I'm going to recommend is to go and learn from a qualified teacher in a workshop, and that could take them a while to get to something like that, which I'll talk about in a moment. But I think it'd be good to give them just a couple minutes.
Yeah, we'll do that first, yeah.
And then we'll tell them about where to go after that.
Yeah, too easy.
Sounds good. So everyone, if you just, as long as you're not driving, just sitting back in your chair and closing the eyes. And if you are driving, you just pause and listen to this later on. I want you to notice that as you're sitting in your chair, there's an effortless breath moving in and out of your body. And that breath has been ebbing and flowing since the day you were born. Night and day, 24/7, just effortlessly in and out. I want you to notice as it moves in and out of your body, that it moves through the nostrils, in and out through the nostrils. I want you to notice as it moves in and out of the nostrils, that there's a slight cooling effect around the rim of the nostril. This is where the air is brushing the moisture on the skin. And as it brushes those beads of sweat on the skin around the rim of the nostril, there's a slight cooling effect on the skin. I want you to keep your attention on that cool skin just inside the rim of the nostril. Now the mind will drift away. It will get a little bit bored of this. It will look for something a little bit more enticing. So our meditation practice is to keep bringing the attention back to that cool skin around the rim of the nostril. Just keep being aware of that single thing. There's nothing else to put our attention on. Whenever the mind drifts away, just come back again on the cool skin around the rim of the nostril. Very effortlessly breathing, just gentle ebb and flow. And then just letting go of that meditation and slowly opening the eyes. And that was a very short introduction to the meditation, but what I would suggest is you maybe put your timer on your phone, and you can have 5 minutes, 10 minutes, ideally up to 10 minutes would give you a phenomenal experience. You'll notice quite a deep calming happening in your nervous system and your mind because you're in the present moment. The present moment, there's no stress. That's where peace lives. So that's just a mechanism, a technique that gets you into peace. So if they want to find me, they can reach out to me anytime on Instagram. It's a good place. I'll answer all my messages. Send me a message, send me a DM if you've got any challenges or questions. They go to my website, tomcronin.com, Instagram, Tom Cronin, all one word, TOMCRONIN, very easy. And then they can find my meditation courses, my upcoming retreats, and my mentoring programs on all those platforms.
I feel a lot better after that one. I feel like I went deeper on.
Yeah, right. And that was only 2 minutes.
Yeah. Wow.
Imagine if you went for 5.
I know.
Yeah.
I'm definitely going to try it out after this. And exactly what you said, it's about being in the present moment.
Yeah.
I had this conversation the other week with an 84-year-old man, and he goes, the moment is now, and the gift that we all have is to be present in this moment.
Mm.
That stayed with me. I was like, wow.
Yeah.
That's some good wisdom right there.
Yeah. You said before about how we make life complex. There's a beautiful quote from Mark Twain. It says, the mind is complex, but life is simple. And life is just actually only ever in the present moment. There's nothing other than the present moment. There's nothing else happening but the present moment. But the mind doesn't live in the present moment. The mind is in the future and the past, and that's when it makes things complex.
Mm. Life would be so much better if we just live in this moment, eh?
That's what will happen with long-term meditation.
Tom, thank you. We have a closing tradition on the podcast where the previous guest leaves a question for the next guest without knowing who it is. And this actually fits into what we're speaking about. What's your day-to-day mantra?
There's a phrase that I like a lot, which I've said on this podcast already, Yogastar Kurukamani, which means established in being, perform action. So what I try to do is to ask, what state am I in before I perform the action? Am I in being? Am I in presence? Am I in love? In the love? And is action coming from that place? So that's what I would say would be my sort of founding sort of mantra for the day.
Oh, thank you. As I said, amazing conversation. I got a lot out of it. I'm going to be making a daily habit to practice meditation now. I'll let you know how it goes. I know the listeners are going to get a lot of value out of this too. So thank you for taking time out of your day to talk with me for about 2 hours now. So thank you.
All good, man. It's great to be here. Thanks for listening, everyone. It's great to share space with you all.